In 1914, after the assassination of the Archduke of Austria, Franz Ferdinand, the world entered a great war with most countries afflicted by its repercussions. World War I. Britain and France were against Germany and Austria, but were unable to create any threats against Austria, due to a large landmass known as Italy in the way. To resolve the situation diplomatically and without bloodshed, the countries united under the Treaty of London. The 1915 Treaty of London allied Italy with Britain and France, and was signed to give the Allies a geographical advantage over the Central Powers. This treaty gave the precedent to many following debates, including a land dispute between Russia and Italy over articles of the treaty, and renegotiations following Italy's inadequate performance in the war. It led to diplomacies such as the resolution for a reduced amount of land in the Paris Peace Conference, and Italy's joining of the Axis powers in World War II.
The Treaty of London was a secret treaty signed by Italy, France, Britain, and Russia. The treaty was signed as the Allies noticed it provided a huge tactical advantage to them. The treaty was created due to World War I, and the Allies needed control of Central Europe to push back the Central Powers. The Allies were not able to alliance with Switzerland as they were unavailable, as they decided to remain neutral throughout the war. Italy originally had an alliance with the Central Powers, but decided to remain neutral for the first part of the war. The war itself was started when the Archduke of Austria, Franz Ferdinand, was assassinated by the Black Hand Group. The Black Hand Group is a terrorist group based in Serbia, whose primary goal was to free Serbians who were trapped in Austria-Hungary. The Allies took Serbia's side and tried to help them eradicate the terrorist group, as the Balkan area of Europe was a troubled area, and the Black Hand Group only contributed to those troubles. Germany took Austria's side, as they had an alliance that was 3 decades old and wanted to keep the alliance for future use. Austria quickly declared war on Serbia after the murder of their Archduke. Italy, remaining neutral throughout these first interactions, joined the Allies on May 23, 1915. Italy was promised Trieste, southern Tyrol, and northern Dalmatia, and other Austrian territories located in Europe. After Italy sided with the Allies, it gave the Allies a huge boost of control of Central Europe, and also allowed for improved mobility of troops. Italy had their eyes on this land and would not be able to claim it if they sided with Austria and Germany. These demands would have been met, but Russia had their eyes on the same piece of land as Italy did. Both sides debated on whether or not to accept, until Russia suffered heavy military losses and was unable to continue negotiating, and finally Italy joined the Allies. The point of the treaty was to use the newfound geographical advantage and place the Central Powers in an awkward position. Once the treaty was signed, things did not. Italy made a move a whole year after the treaty was signed. This led to diplomatic stress, as the Allies would now have to negotiate with Italy over payment, as Italy had not acted on their part of the treaty. This led to the Treaty of Versailles, which was a revised version of the Treaty of London. The Treaty of London helped the Allies gain control over Central Europe and force back the Central Powers away. This treaty also led Italy into the Allies, as they had earlier been neutral throughout the first part of World War I. Now they had Austria and Hungary surrounded. The real importance of this treaty was that it allowed for more opportunities to strike Austria-Hungary. Later down the line, it can be said that this treaty was the first of many that allowed the Allies to win. This treaty did 2 things for the Allies. It brought Italy into the war while forcing them to join the Allies rather than the Central Powers, and on top of that, it granted the Allies a positional advantage over the Central Powers. This pushed Austria and Germany into a corner, while giving the Allies the edge over the Central Powers, leading to the Allies winning World War I.
The treaty worked out in the short term for the Allies, giving them a decisive military advantage over the Central Powers, and created threats towards Austria. However, the situation in Italy conflicted that of the Allies at the time. Italy had broken one of the articles of the treaty, in not declaring war on Germany in 1915, and had a subpar performance in the war, which led to nation leaders, especially US President Woodrow Wilson, to wish to void the treaty. In the end, Italy received a lesser amount of land via the Treaty of Versailles. While the Entente promised to give Italy South Tyrol, Trento and Trieste, Styria, Dalmatia, a territory over Albania and Anatolia, instead, Italy was only given South Tyrol, Trento, and Trieste, Styria, and only small territories in Dalmatia. Italy walked out of this Paris Conference infuriated at the Allies. The injustice done to Italy had a silver lining, however. Italy had become unified over the hatred of the Allies. The Treaty of London was also used to further Lenin's communist regime, in which all of the secret treaties that Russia had agreed to were made public. With the public on their side after the mockeries of the Russian government, the Soviet Empire flourished. Around this time, a certain Benito Mussolini wanted more power over his people. Although he had some after his march on Rome, bringing his party up to the national stage, he wanted to be all-powerful. He wanted to be the only power in Italy and impose his fascist dreams all over the people. After the publication of the secret treaties, one being the Treaty of London, he seized his opportunity. He propagated the treaties and the inflation that they had caused in an attempt to discredit the current prime minister to further his political campaign, and it had made him the prime minister of Italy. He rose to power quickly, and it set the footing for a takeover of Italy soon. Mussolini would be a great part of World War II in the following decades. When Germany wanted out of the Treaty of Versailles, with a certain Hitler being dictator, and wanted revenge on the Allies, they came to Italy, and this time, after being wronged by the Allies in the First World War, came to a diplomatic end with Italy joining the Central Powers. This was directly caused by the lack of land Italy got from the Second Revised Treaty of London. With Italy's support, World War II was much harder for the Allies, and it took a greater toll on both sides. Britain went into a great debt, and Germany got hit even harder by the Second Treaty of Versailles. If Italy didn't join the Central Powers, this war may have not been as great as it is known to be of now. The dictator of Italy at the time was a Benito Mussolini, whose ideals greatly matched those of Adolf Hitler's, and the revised Treaty of London was the final nail in the coffin for Italy to join the Central Powers. The Treaty of London carried great significance throughout the history of modern civilization and influenced the outcomes of great events in history. From Soviet propaganda to the elections of Mussolini, the treaty influenced all countries and corners of the world, leading to a debate between countries and diplomacies within nations. No one would recognize the repercussions the treaty would have until it was too late to stop.